everybody, and welcome in to episode 52 of the Dorton and Doetkott Debate podcast. I am Lucas Dorton. Obviously, that is not Nick Doetkott. That is the man, the myth, the legend, Cody Frank. Cody, my man, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Especially that I get to talk and roast Rockies baseball with a fellow passionate Rockies fan as yourself. So, folks, if you want to look for an hour long, however long this podcast is going to be, of two people shredding the Rockies, come no further. Look no further, because Cody and I are going to do that for you today. I'm assuming.
Yeah, there's a lot that we can talk about here. I mean, you don't even have to follow baseball to know how dysfunctional the Rockies are as an organization.
No, I can't say you're wrong. I really can't. So first off, Cody, if you don't mind giving a little background about yourself, kind of your sports fandoms, your background as far as that stuff goes, and so the fans can know, I guess, a little bit more about who is Cody Frank.
I mean, honestly, like overall, I'm just a huge sports fanatic. Like it doesn't matter what sport it is. I mean, of course, when it comes to the major four, I follow all of the local teams or my favorite teams: Broncos, Rockies, Nuggets, Avs. Um, but no, just about any sport that's on, I will watch on TV. So, you know.
Yeah. Cody, folks, is one of the most knowledgeable and passionate sports fans you meet. Right now, this is like a chill. This is how Cody is, 90% of the time he's just chill. He's kind of laid back. Don't really think much of him. Folks, go to a sporting event with this man, and it is a beast that you have never seen before. He's going to be the loudest person in the arena, the one, having the most fun out there. And if you want a passionate sports fan to go to a sporting event game with, Cody, definitely, you got to take the cake for that. I don't think it's close.
And you've never been to a Bronco game with me. Like we obviously went to the Nuggets game and saw that. Bronco games take it up to a whole new level.
So Nugget games is like Cody at 5, and Bronco games is 30 for you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I cannot imagine how much crazier you are for that.
Yeah, and amazingly, I've never lost my voice, even though I'm screaming at the top of my lungs for 3 hours.
Yeah, that's got to be a talent that not a lot of people have, because I have lost my voice a number of times doing that. But you're built different, I guess, is what it boils down to.
Well, obviously.
I mean, we all knew that, but But anyways, so let's just get into it. Last year, the Rockies went 26-34, obviously the shortened 60-game season, finished 4th in the NL West. When the season started, it was looking good. At one point, we were probably one of, if not the best team in baseball. Record-wise, we were playing well. Everything was clicking. It was looking good. And especially with the expanded playoffs, it was almost a shoo-in that the Rockies would find their way into the playoffs somehow, whether it be winning the division, finishing second in the division, or one of the wild card spots. Well, it turns out we did not get any of those. After starting off as one of the best records in baseball, we finished as one of the worst records in baseball. So, Cody, what from your observation and things that you noticed from the Rockies this last season was kind of the main reasons of why they didn't live up to how they started?
I mean, a lot of it the team as a whole. The Rockies have always been an offensive team. Everyone talks about, the altitude. That's why the batting numbers are so inflated. That's why we're one of the top offenses in baseball every year. But last year, the bats didn't show up. And I think in the beginning of the season, we saw, it's a typical Rockies season where we start the season off hot and fall apart. Doesn't seem to matter how many games we play. That's just how the season always goes.
Yep.
And again, the batting fell apart, and that instantly hurt because our pitching has always been an issue, and that's why we have to put up 8, 9, 15 runs a game.
And
Just
sometimes that's not even enough.
Oh, I know. It's just the team as a whole seemed to implode last year. And I mean, of course, injuries didn't help, you know.
Right.
It was just a terrible season.
Yeah. And, addressing the hitting, I'm glad you brought that up because I think that was kind of one of their main struggles at times. It was really inconsistent. One thing with Rockies hitting, like you mentioned, pretty much through the whole 162 games or 60 games, typically the Rockies hitting is always going to be consistently good and it's going to get the job done. This year, it was a lot of peaks and valleys. There were times where our hitting was amazing, and it didn't matter who was on the mound, we were going to rock them. But then there were times it's like, we just want to get a hit, and it was really, really inconsistent. Obviously, not to mention the bullpen struggles and the pitching struggles as well too. But yeah, no, that's great. So that's probably maybe now. What do you think? Do you think COVID kind of played a factor into kind of how the hitting happened last year? It didn't really have the typical normal off-season spring training like they usually do to get into it, or do you think it was just 60 games, they felt pressured to do more with less time?
I would say it was probably more of the latter. I don't think that the lack of off-season work I don't feel like it had much of an impact on that. Just because I feel like a lot of the players that we had on our team, they were returning players. They're veteran guys who, have been here 4 years. And yeah, when you have an offense that's got Arenado, Story, Blackman, you expect them to hit consistently, hit well. And I mean, the rest of the team, it was just we weren't getting enough out of everybody involved.
Right. Yeah. I think we did see good sets though, and things that I was happy to see. Kyle Freeland kind of got back to a little bit of himself of how he was in the 2018 season. Obviously, 2018 season, he was amazing. I believe he finished top 5 in Cy Young voting, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember where he finished, but I know he was like up there as far as
yeah, because he was pretty far up there, and wasn't he? Didn't he finish with like the lowest or one of the lowest ERAs at Coors Field that year?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was absolutely, good to see him coming back to how he was. All not really fully, but he pitched a lot better, that's for sure. Yeah, obviously injuries and stuff happened. The bullpen once again was an issue. Guys were just way too inconsistent. One thing about the Rockies, Cody, is that they typically are not a team that goes out and spends the big money on free agents. They typically are like, let's see what we can do from within. And the offseason that we got Brian Shaw and we got Wade Davis, brought in those guys. I was like, okay, we are in it to win it. We want to try and build this bullpen. And I was pumped because Brian Shaw was a beast for the Indians. Wade Davis obviously was a lockdown player with the Royals, the Cubs. And they got here, and nothing good happened. Wade Davis was okay at times, but he was walking so many guys, giving up a lot of big hits. So if you had to address the bullpen situation as a whole last year, where do you think you would have graded it, in your opinion?
It's a tough one because ultimately last year as a whole, like talking about the whole team again, the whole team underperformed
Right.
terribly. So you can't. It's hard to give anybody like anything good. And the bullpen last year, you saw a lot of the same issues coming up. You mentioned Wade Davis, and you saw that same. I've seen it personally too. Um, watching us build a big lead, and then Wade Davis comes in, and you just
Yeah.
hang your head because then you know the lead's not safe.
Yeah. No, I agree. I
Uh,
agree.
and it's one of those things like, yeah, at the time, it's like you were saying when we signed all of these guys. Jake McGee is another one
Right. We traded for
that,
him. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and you expected, okay, it looks like we're trending in the right direction, we want to win, but then come to find out you threw all this money at these guys and they can't. uh, you have to wonder if it's that psychological thing, about pitching at Coors Field.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they came in here, and I mean, because I remember watching Brian Shaw in particular. He'd come in for an inning and give up 4 or 5 runs, and it's just,
Yeah. It was bad. It was bad. I mean, Wade Davis, like I mentioned, Wade Davis at times was like, okay, you can see why we gave him the money. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I do not think there was ever one time where I was like, man, I'm glad we gave Brian Shaw this contract. I can't think of a single time where I was like, man, he's definitely worth the money.
yeah,
Maybe initially when he had his initial struggles at the very beginning, I was like, okay, he's a veteran player, he's had success, he's going to figure it out. So I'm not worried. But then he never figured it out, ever.
yeah. Well, and what's funny too about the whole Wade Davis thing, because that's been a struggle for us too, is finding a consistent closer.
Hmm.
We haven't had one arguably since Houston Street. So
Yes.
we did have that one year of Greg Holland where Greg Holland
Yep.
performed really well, and then we let him walk, and we just kind of had whatever at that point. I think was it Carlos Estevez was
Hmm.
uh, coming in for a while, and you want to talk about inconsistent.
Well, his nickname, folks, for those of you who don't or aren't aware, is the Wild Thing. And let me tell you, that is true to form. He's going to have times where he's going to blow people away at 100 miles an hour, and then there's times he can't locate his 100 miles an hour and is walking everywhere. So, um, yeah, no, that's accurate. One guy too, and we've kind of been missing him a little bit the last couple seasons, is Scott Oberg. I know he was dealing with some blood clots, I think, in his pitching arm. That's kind of taken him out of commission here for a while. It sounds like he's back on track. He's ready to go for this season, which is huge because when he was pitching and he was playing, he was closing out games for us, and he was very consistent and he was getting the job done. So, do you like Scott Oberg? Are you a fan of him?
Yeah, like that era, like arguably the best relief pitchers we've had probably within the last 5 years or so. You're looking at Oberg and Adam Ottavino, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
and it's unfortunate that that's pretty much where the list ends.
Yeah.
Like,
Very unfortunate.
and it's still just a strange thing though, considering, just a couple of years ago we were a playoff team,
Right.
and
Right.
and I mean a lot of that was that was the year that our starting pitching really did well, but our bullpen still was terrible. We couldn't rely on anyone to close out games at that point either.
Yep.
And
Yeah. No, you're 100% right for that. And that's one thing too of why I was so confused after we made the playoffs in 2018. The off season after that, if I'm saying, okay, we just got swept in the NLDS, that's a step further than we made it the year before. Let's make a splash. Let's make a move. Get a big time ace. get someone that we can put in our lineup or pitching rotation, and they can take us to the next to the next round. Because I truly think that the team that we had after the 2018 year was a team that I thought could compete. I'm not going to say for a World Series. I think that's kind of shooting for the stars, but definitely for the division, definitely a postseason spot for sure. Maybe they come out of the NLDS. Now, obviously, they didn't make moves in the offseason. Kyle Freeland was horrendous in 2019. He did not pitch well at all. I mean, we just talked about it before. He went from getting votes for the Cy Young to us sending him down to the minor leagues because he was struggling that much with command, whatever it was. I think German Marquez was injured and was inconsistent at times. Senzatella wasn't great. John Gray wasn't great. So there was a lot of things that worked great in 2018 that didn't quite work in 2019, and we weren't aggressive in free agency and trades as well to help. So now I guess let's go into the offseason, dig through that. Really, we have made a couple little free agent signings, CJ Crone, a couple pitchers, but everyone has been talking about the big one, so I'm not even going to deny it anymore. I'm just going to get past it. Nolan Arenado trade to the St. Louis Cardinals. Cody, I know you and I, we used to work together when I lived out in Colorado for a little over a year, and we had many sports talks, a lot of them typically about the Rockies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you and I both kind of had the mindset of, the Rockies at some point probably will trade Nolan. And it's just a matter of when. Were you surprised that they traded him? We'll get into the specifics and stuff of the trade shortly here, but just were you surprised when they traded him as early on into his contract as they ended up doing?
No, not particularly, merely because of the strange opt-out clause that they put in the middle of it, which I believe is after this season. It's either after this season. And ultimately I think that the team knew that he was going to opt out because frankly we're not in any position to contend right now. And so there's no way that I could have seen Arenado staying on the team past this year. And so I think the team was in a position where they pretty much had to trade him,
Sure.
to at least get some sort of value off of it.
Sure. Yeah. What's interesting about that opt-out clause too is that when Nolan first signed it, I believe it was after the 2018 season, right after the second year we made the playoffs, I think is when they initially signed that contract. Jeff Bridich, who is the Rockies GM, pretty much wanted the opt-out clause in there. So what's funny about that is Nolan didn't even ask for it. He didn't even ask for the opt-out clause. It wasn't something he had mentioned, but Jeff Bridich was insistent on wanting that in there. So Bridich almost, I don't know, it almost was like he was putting a timer on the Rockies' success for 2 years, but you just signed an 8-year contract, I think is how much it ended up, the years wise or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. So it was just interesting to me, but I do see what you're saying as far as he maybe would have opted out. Maybe they should have tried to trade him. So now I guess we'll get into the specifics of the trade. My opinion, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a huge Nolan Arenado guy and I love the Rockies, I think this is one of the worst trades in Major League Baseball history, if not the worst. If not the worst.
Yeah.
So first off, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the trade as a whole there?
It's, it falls in line with a lot of times, when we've traded um, stars. I mean, the big one that comes to mind, yeah, you go back to the Troy Tulowitzki trade, and you look at all of the young pieces that we got out of that trade. None of them are with the Rockies anymore,
Yeah.
and I kind of feel like this is going to be a similar situation that we got some young pieces, um, that will probably be called up within a couple of years. They'll make one appearance and then they'll disappear into the night. I don't I don't think we got any, I mentioned we had to get some value for Arenado. This ultimately the trade is just to make the team feel good that
Oh,
hey, look, we made a trade.
yeah.
It doesn't benefit us in any way, but
Oh, especially the Austin Gomber guy we got who's had like some major league experience. I would be honest with you. I think he's probably going to be a fourth, fifth guy in the rotation.
mhm.
He's young. Obviously, it remains to be seen what he can do yet, but he's probably going to be bottom half of the rotation. Like you mentioned, the prospects that we got from the Cardinals aren't anything special. I mean, maybe they turn into something good, and that can be the hope on this. If one of the guys that we get can turn into something great, okay, maybe it's worth it. I don't know if that's going to happen. We didn't get any of the Cardinals' top prospects, none of the top 100 prospects in baseball. And not to mention, we gave them $50 million along with Nolan. $50 million. So essentially, the Cardinals are getting 1 free year of. We're essentially paying Nolan Arenado's contract for this year. The Cardinals
Mhm.
are getting a 3 year, folks, of the best third baseman in baseball, the best player that the Rockies have probably ever had, and then a future Hall of Famer in Nolan Arenado for free. Because he can opt out after this year. If he wants to, he can opt out after this year and go somewhere else. So the Cardinals could essentially get 1 year of Nolan Arenado, and it can be for free, and they gave up nothing for it.
Yep.
I love
Welcome
it.
to the beautiful world of baseball. I I always think that these kind of deals are like no matter what team it is, I always feel like it's a huge risk for like in this situation, it's a huge risk for us because there again we're taking on prospects that most of the time you don't know if they're going to be any good,
Right.
you know. And I just that's that you want to talk about an issue with the Rockies. They man,
Yeah.
I
No,
lost it.
no, it's all right. There's so many bad things about the Rockies. You're probably just trying to think of the worst thing to bring up right now, and it's tough because there's a lot of bad things about them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's eh, dude, comparatively speaking, we understand what the Texans are going through, you know,
Yeah.
to a football sense, like
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't understand how like just in general franchises can get this dysfunctional and no one does anything about it, you know.
Yeah. I agree. The Rockies are, they're more concerned about making money than they are concerned about putting out a winning team. Now, they may come back and tell you is like, oh, well, we have homegrown players like, Trevor Story who's played well, Charlie Blackmon. You traded for Herman Marquez. That one worked well. What do you mean we're not trying? Well, when you put out the same garbage every year, and those players are our bright spots and our superstars of the team. And I agree. But there comes a point in time where you got to do something to get better. There's a reason why the Dodgers are always winning the NL West and always competing for a title. There's a reason why the Yankees typically are always in the playoffs. The Tampa Bay Rays, you want to talk about not having an amazing roster, but doing the most with it. There's not a single other that does it, sport team that does it better than the Tampa Bay Rays do most with what they have. And they don't have a lot of great players, but what they have, they get the job done and they find a way to win 90 games and make the playoffs every year. Some teams just know how to win and some teams don't. And the Rockies just don't know how to win because they have ownership and GM that just don't care enough. And that sucks. It really does suck.
Well, and you have to wonder too, because that's always talked about too, is the Rockies are a smaller market team, so they're obviously not going to have as much money to work with as, say, the Yankees or the Dodgers or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But what I'm curious about is why don't we could, as a team, we could potentially try, like, if the owner and the GM, they actually wanted to win and we don't want to spend a lot of money, why not employ like a Moneyball type strategy, and go get some guys, like some veterans, some guys you wouldn't expect to make a major league roster, bring them in here and just see what they can do, see if it's an upgrade instead of the way that we do it, either paying for over the hill veterans or bringing up guys who have no major league experience,
Right. I think that's a good point that you bring up. The Rockies are a team. They're a team that
Yeah.
that I feel they get at times good prospects, but I feel they're so worried about wanting them to have this immediate success that a lot of the times they rush the development stage and then they get to the big leagues and they're just not ready yet. We saw it with Josh Rutledge. If you remember him, Double A was amazing. He completely skipped Triple A, came to the big leagues. For a few months or so, he was looking amazing and he was great. But he turned into nothing. Brendan Rodgers, who's been our top prospect for a while. I'm hoping this year he's going to get legit playing time and he's healthy. But I'm worried that maybe they rushed him too. And it's, we have other guys in our system that's kind of been around there for 3-4 years. So I'm just hoping they take their time. And if we don't see a guy till 25 because he's not ready till he's 25, that's fine. But don't bring a guy up when he's 22 and he's not even close to being ready yet. And yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Yeah, and see, I think some of that could stem from the pressure of seeing other franchises do it and do it successfully. I mean,
Yeah.
you look within our own division at the Padres and Fernando Tatis.
Yeah.
He's so young and he's already he's a super talented player.
Yeah.
Like, and I think part of it is the Rockies management looks at that and they're like, well, we want our guy to be like that.
Yeah.
And so you end up it's putting a square peg in a round hole. You're forcing a guy to be someone that he's not at that moment.
Absolutely. Not only but the Padres, but the Dodgers too. I mean, every single year it seems like the Dodgers are bringing somebody else up that's in contention to win Rookie of the Year. It seems like every year they always have the Rookie of the Year finalists on their team every year.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's frustrating, and there's gonna have to come a point in time where someone's gonna have to take over the team. Like, look at the New York Mets, for example. How many years with the New York Mets lately, X out the World Series year when they were there, 2015, 2014.
Yeah.
Every other year, typically before that, and since then, they are a laughing stock. Everyone's always making fun of them, and they've been a joke of a team. Well, what happened? They bring in an owner who has the money, but he's also a fan, and he wants to see the team win. We need to bring in somebody who, obviously, and I understand it's a business, and to some degree, yeah, you have to make money, and you have to do that, and I get that. But if the entire operation is consumed about trying to bring in the most money and not so much winning, well, then that's why you have a party deck in right field and McGregor Square outside of Coors Field to bring in the money. So it's just, I don't know. It's just frustrating, and we just I wish they cared more about it than the fans do, and they don't. And that's the part that sucks the most.
Yeah, I honestly don't understand. Like, I feel like if you are going, oh, if you're going to get into the business and you want to own a team or something like that, you're like, the money will come,
Mhm.
but you should be focused on winning and providing your fans with an excellent product on the field, and the Rockies in particular, they haven't done that. Like, they aren't putting a competitive team. Like, there's competitive pieces, but as a team, it's not very competitive, and it's frustrating to see us have guys like Daniel Murphy. That yeah, I mean that's all that
Oh
has to be said there,
gosh.
dude. I'm still so frustrated about that off season when we
Yeah.
signed him to the same contract as the Yankees gave DJ.
Yep. And now look at DJ. He's making money and is in back-to-back MVP finalist, or should have been.
Yeah, like he's playing even better than he was at Coors Field. Like,
Yep. Yeah.
but instead, the 35-year-old guy who we're gonna make play first base is the better option.
That's another thing. Can we sign someone? And folks, if you're watching this podcast, you're realizing something pretty quick is that it's different from other podcasts we've done before because it's not. We're going out, we're talking as fans, and that's how I feel about the Rockies right now. But can we go out and trade something for a first baseman? Not an Ian Desmond outfielder shortstop convert to a first baseman. Not a Daniel Murphy DH second baseman convert to a first baseman. Not a Ryan McMahon second base, third baseman mainly convert to a first baseman. Just get us a first baseman. And I think Josh Fuentes could potentially be that. I really do like Josh Fuentes, who's Nolan Arenado's cousin, for those of you who aren't aware. He played first base last year, and he did a great job defensively, and he really knew what he was doing. Um, but yeah, just get a first baseman, okay? Don't waste your time in an entire offseason trying to teach a dog how to drive a car, okay? Just get the positions that you need with guys that you know can do it, and just do that. Just do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm asking too much. I don't know. I mean, it seems like a pretty basic request for me.
Well, and I feel like this year it's not great. They've always gotten like obscure ones because what was it last year, the year before when we had Yonder Alonso, who was the
Yonder
first
Alonso, yep. Michael Kadire. Michael Kadire played decent first base.
Kadire
I
was
don't think we've
good.
had an actual first baseman since Justin Morneau. I think Justin Morneau, honestly, was probably our last actual first baseman who knows how to play first base and was good at first base. Like, he
Yeah.
got the job done. And that was, man, 2013, 14 that we had him.
Yeah, it was
I mean,
2010s.
7, 8 years ago that we've had a first baseman. I mean, you hear that and it's just like you laugh at it. You really just laugh at it. I mean, yeah. Go ahead though.
Oh, it's just an interesting thing because you were talking about the free agents we signed earlier, and I've always kind of been a fan of his, but Greg Byrd, who we picked up,
Yes.
is a potential option at first base. I don't know really if he's that strong of a contender. I kind of like the feel good story that he's a hometown kid.
Yeah.
You know, I but yeah, we have struggled for years to find a first baseman, and I don't understand. Like, because there's been guys on the market too, like legit first baseman, really good first baseman,
Yeah.
and like you said, we go for Ian Desmond, Daniel Murphy, guys
Yeah.
who aren't first basemen.
Yeah. Um, No, it hasn't worked out, and it's frustrating for sure. So I'm interested to see how the Rockies do, especially what their plan is for third base. My opinion, this is if I'm building the Rockies lineup next year, I'm putting Brendan Rodgers at second base, obviously Trevor Story at shortstop. I'm gonna put Ryan McMahon at third because he can man the hot corner. We've seen at the times that Nolan is off or Nolan hasn't played. Obviously, I'm not saying he's Nolan Arenado at third base, but he knows how to play the position and
Yeah.
put, I don't know, CJ Crone or someone else at first base. Then the outfield is a whole nother story too with that. Tapia, Charlie Blackmon, Sam Hilliard. You got guys there. Obviously, let David Dahl go in the offseason, which, you know, I can
Want to
see.
talk about,
I don't know.
you want to talk about another mistake?
Yeah, I would love to. Please. Let's
Um,
get some more salt and lemon juice for our wound here.
oh, I know. Well, on the bright side, Ian Desmond opted out, so
Yeah,
don't have to worry about him this year.
yeah,
See, I always, that's another thing. I've always felt that the Rockies have always been very, like they've been loaded in terms of outfielders. You
yeah.
know, it seems every year we bring up, like we bring up another one or two prospects and they actually turn out to be pretty good and they can play at the major league level. And so
Hmm.
that's, going back like over the years, just some of the outfield signings that we've made. Because I'm just thinking, um, Drew Stubbs,
Yep.
remember that?
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
like
Oh, brought in
several,
Matt Kemp this last year.
oh, and Gerardo Parra.
I really like Gerardo Parado.
Yeah,
Like
he
Gold
was,
Glove defense, and he was a very timely hitter. I was a huge fan of Parra.
yeah, like, and at the time, like he definitely, in my opinion, he proved me wrong because at that time too, I was never, like I said, we've always had a good amount of outfielders and we never really needed to sign him. He was the one exception that I'm like, he impressed me enough, um, that the signing made sense.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Um, yeah, it's tough and um, it's frustrating too. Obviously talking about the trade here with Arenado, you brought up the Troy Tulowitzki trade. The Rockies just do not have a they don't have a good track record of winning trades. Now, I get it to some degree. In every single trade, you're going to have a winner and you're going to have a loser. That's just how it goes. It's rare that you get an even balanced trade, and I get that. But the Rockies have typically been so bad at trades that they botch all of them. Like you
Mm.
mentioned, the Troy Tulowitzki one, not a single player we got back from him is still on the Rockies. Not a single one. More than likely, I mean, is it too early to tell? Maybe, but probably botched the Nolan Arenado trade. We kind of botched the Corey Dickerson trade when we traded him to Tampa. We got Jake McGee and Herman Marquez. Now, the only reason I say it wasn't a full botch is because Marquez has actually turned into a really solid pitcher for us.
Yeah.
The one trade, and I challenge you, Cody. I challenge you. Think of and find me a better trade that worked out for the Rockies than when we traded Matt Holliday to Oakland for Houston Street and Carlos Gonzalez. I think that's one of the best trades we have ever made because both of the guys that we got back were elite. I mean, Carlos Gonzalez, one of the best Rockies of all time. Houston
Mhm.
Street, was only here for a short period, kind of blew big games at moments, but one of the best closers we've ever had, too. I challenge you to think of a better trade than that one because I can.
No, no, I can't either. It was funny. I thought you were just gonna leave it off at just name the best trade. That was the only one that could come to mind was the Matt Holiday trade.
And that was
But
what, 11 years ago? 10 years ago? What was it? Because did we trade him in the '08 or '09 season? After.
I don't. we didn't trade him right after the World Series season, did we?
No, he was there after 2007. Was there in 2000? I can't remember if we traded him in
I think it was 2009.
2009. Well, now I'm curious, so I'm gonna have to look here. Um, but and it's sad that that is the only trade that I can think of that worked out well for us. And the fact that it was double digit years ago when that happened is sad. I mean, everyone, so we traded him, I'll get going in a second here. In the 2009 season is when we traded. So he was here 2007, he was here 2008. We traded him in 2009. And it's sad. I remember, I don't know how big of a Dan O'Dowd fan you were, but I remember when Dan O'Dowd was here, he was the Rockies GM before Jeff Bridich. I was not the biggest fan of him. He kind of just didn't seem to be aggressive in free agency, didn't seem to do anything, was just kind of sat back and didn't do much. And I wasn't a big fan of him. And I remember there was so many people that were relieved when we let him go. Cody, if I'm being honest with you right now, I think I'd rather have Dan O'Dowd back than Jeff Bridich right now. What do you think?
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Like,
And folks, you don't understand how much Rockies fans did not like Dan O'Dowd. I mean, I don't think I can find a single one that liked him a lot. I can't think of one, and I would much rather have him back today.
yeah, I'm literally stumped trying to think of anything that Jeff Bridich has done well in his reign with the Rockies,
The first big thing that he did was a Troy Tulowitzki trade. That was the first big move that he made as a GM. We all saw how that worked out.
I will say though, I mean, obviously that trade was a loss for us, but it was kind of a lose-lose trade considering Tulowitzki was never really that great after we traded him. So
That's fair. That's fair. And then, that's why I'm a little more forgiving on the Tulowitzki one, just because you could tell he was getting towards the end of his career. He was staying less and less well, if I'm being honest, Tulowitzki was never fully healthy with the Rockies, really, when he was ever there.
yeah,
But he was getting towards the end, so I understand kind of have to get something for him while we can now. But man, we did not get a lot for him. I mean, Jeff Hoffman was probably the best guy from that, but he was so inconsistent at times. And obviously, we
yeah.
just dealt him this offseason too, Cincinnati. So,
Oh, I know. And that's an unfortunate thing because I was a big fan of his.
yeah,
I was really hopeful that he could, become that fourth or fifth guy in the rotation, and he just never got it all together here.
I think spent a little bit of time in the bullpen occasionally too, kind of in a long relief role from time to time as well.
Yeah, because I think that was towards the end. That was towards the end of his stint here. Because I know for a while they were trying to get him to be, one of the core pieces of our rotation, and it just
Never worked. Never worked. Yeah, so, it's frustrating and it sucks, but you know what? Let's make some predictions and just rip on them even more while we're at it. So, Cody, next year or this year, coming up now, everything we hear is supposed to be a 162 game season, spring training and everything involved there. So, 162 game season. How are the Rockies finishing? Division wise, where do you see them finishing in the NL West?
um so I'm not as pessimistic as every sports media outlet you see. Because everything I've looked at, like I've read articles on which team has the best lineup going into the season, that kind of stuff. Rockies are ranked last. Who has the best farm system? Rockies were like 26th or something, Like everything about this team is pointing towards their first 100 loss season. I refuse to acknowledge that. I'm going to say I have two predictions. Optimistically, We win 90 games, maybe sneak into the playoffs. Optimistically.
Keyword optimistically there, folks.
Realistically, I see us probably finishing, I'd say probably 70 and 92.
Yeah.
Because I really I don't believe we are the worst team. We're the worst run team. We're not the worst team in baseball, though.
Yeah. I definitely think the Rockies are a 90 plus loss team. Now, I don't have an exact record of how I think they're going to finish, but I think we are losing 90 plus games.
Yeah,
Do they get to 100 losses? Maybe. Maybe.
I
But do I think we are the worst team in baseball? We're not Baltimore. Kansas City isn't good. Baltimore isn't good. I do think there are teams that are worse than the Rockies, but that doesn't make the Rockies that much better. I think they are a 90 plus loss team still, regardless of that, for sure.
I agree with that. I can't see a world where the Rockies are that bad that they hit 100 losses in a season. I know we've come close before, but I just I can't see it happening.
The only reason that I may not say we get to 100 losses is Bud Black. I'm a huge fan of Bud Black. I like him a lot. I think he's done great things. What brought us to the playoffs his first 2 years here. He's a great manager and everyone loves him. And then he's won a lot and knows how to win. And obviously this last couple seasons hasn't done that. But I'm not putting any of the Rocky struggles these last 2 seasons on Bud Black at all. It's not on him at all. He's doing the best with what's given to him, and that's all you can ask for in a manager is bring out the best. But I still think, regardless of that, I think it's a 90 plus loss season for the Rockies. I look at the NL West. Obviously the Dodgers are significantly better. The Padres are significantly better. Um, the Giants, I think, are better than the Rockies. I think it's close, but I think the Giants are better just because they almost made the playoffs last year. Now, say what you will, 60 games, okay, whatever. But fact of
Yeah.
the matter is that everyone had a chance to make the playoffs. The Rockies didn't, the Giants almost did. The Diamondbacks, I could maybe see the Rockies finishing above the Diamondbacks. I don't think they're going to be a great team this next year.
I,
Yeah.
I could agree with that. I feel like I think for sure you peg the division. You have Dodgers on top, Padres second, and then I honestly think the 3 through 5, you can make cases for any of the three teams
You
finishing
could.
in order.
You could. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, definitely.
I do have one wild prediction that I can throw out there, though.
Let's hear it.
Rockies go on to win, say 85, 90 games, sneak into the postseason, eliminate Arenado and the Cardinals. There you go.
That is something that you will see in MLB The Show 20. But it's a bold take and it's a wild card, out there scenario. I mean, if that happened, then I feel sorry for Arenado, but that would be really cool. That would be really cool.
Yeah, there's a part of me that's like, I always want my team to do well.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah.
I the Rockies are probably one of the hardest ones to be optimistic about, what I'm saying. You go into every season and it's like, what kind of roller coaster are we going to go on? Just using like my favorite team, going into the season. I mean, listen, we're not here to discuss the Broncos, so we won't do that. But the Nuggets and the Avs, you go into every season and you're like, oh yeah, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to be a playoff team. The Rockies, it's like, oh,
Maybe.
we might scrape out a wild card, or we might lose 100 games. You never know.
Yeah. No, and that's a great point, Cody. And that was like literally the next thing I was going to bring up was that looking at other Denver sports, obviously I'm not a Broncos fan, I'm a Dolphins fan, but even it can kind of be applied under the same mantra there. The when you see teams that you're fans of in the same state do well, you wonder what you're doing wrong. Colorado Avalanche are, Stanley Cup favorite to win it all, the whole thing, not just to make it there, to win it all.
Yeah.
The Denver Nuggets, they're struggling a little bit now, but that's neither here nor there. But they're a playoff team and they can compete. I don't know if they're not a title team. I don't know, but they're a key team that can compete. And then,
They were a title team last year.
last year, yeah.
Then they let everyone go. But
Yep. And then, obviously, looking at the Denver Broncos, they're not great right now, but they're trying to make strides to become better. They brought in a GM who's had success with the Vikings, drafted and developed a lot of great players for the Vikings. And you kind of hope that maybe he can do the same thing with the Broncos. And, you've drafted young guys recently that you hope can be great players. The Rockies just, you know, it and it sucks that I care so much about baseball and why baseball is by far my favorite sport, and to have my favorite team and my favorite sport be the worst team out of all of my favorite sports and teams, it does kind of suck, but it's whatever.
yeah, but I mean, you compare it to other sports, and it's kind of like, you're thinking about all the fans in Cleveland with the Browns,
Yeah,
and all the misery that they've gone through. It's like
yeah,
it's the same kind of situation, and ultimately you just got to stick through it with your team, and eventually they're going to break through.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully, cross my fingers.
It,
That's for sure.
we just need a new GM, and everything will be better. So
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, new GM ownership, everything. Um, but anyways, folks, I think we're at the end of the show here, but this is Cody. This is now my favorite part of the show because I get to ask you questions that the fans get to know more about you as a Rockies and a baseball fan. So
oh god.
if you're ready, I'm putting you on the spot here. I didn't tell them about this. I'm putting them on the spot. You're ready. Here we go.
All right, let's see what you got.
So, who is your all-time favorite Rockies player and why?
Oh, that's it. Luckily, I know the answer. The issue is there's technically two answers that I could use here.
Okay.
Uh, so first off, DJ Lemayhew, even though he was not here, he was here for what, 5, 6 years. One of my favorite players to watch play. Never got to see him hit a home run in person, but you know, um, just the way that he played and the fact that he always seemed very underrated
Oh
as a
yeah.
second baseman. And like now everyone knows who he is because he's playing for the Yankees. But
Right.
um but I think my favorite far and away has to be Todd Hilton. Like
Yeah.
he is he is the Rockies.
Yeah.
And um you know, I didn't when I got into baseball it was towards the end of his career, so I didn't get to see him play as much. But just the impact that he had on the team and like the um everything about it, because I've heard so many stories too about like him not just on the field but off the field, like just a fantastic person in the Colorado community.
Yes.
you know
Yes.
how can you not like a guy like that?
Absolutely. I know I agree with you 100%. DJ LeMahieu is a guy that you knew what you were going to get from him. You knew you were going to get Gold Glove defense, and he was going to get hits for you. And that's what you expect from him, and that's what he gave you every single day, night in, night out. You always knew what you were going to get from DJ. You never had to worry about it. And Todd Helton, I'm in agreement with you there. Todd Helton's my all-time favorite Rocky, and it's not even close. So I'm right there along with you there for sure. And I did have the chance to meet Todd Helton one time outside of the Rockies after he had retired. Super, super nice guy. He's a really cool dude. So I agree with you there. Now, who is your all-time favorite? This one's a little more difficult. All-time favorite MLB player that did not spend the majority of his career on the Rockies. Now, he may have played for the Rockies at some point, but he had to have spent the majority of his career elsewhere.
Here again, I think we're gonna have two major ones.
Okay.
So one of them did play for the Rockies, Larry Walker.
Yep.
I've always something there again. He falls into the same category as Todd Hilton. Like it's just hard not to like the guy,
Sure.
but he's not on that same level. You know what I'm saying? Like he's, you know, it just something. A lot of the players that I've really liked always tie back to the Rockies in some way, except for the other guy. I've always been a big fan of Edgar Martinez, actually.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
On his for a while, just because, you know, I didn't get into sports in general until probably about it was like 2010-ish, I would say.
Sure.
And so, you know, learning a lot of stuff, learning about a lot of different players, and it's just something about the fact that, you know, he was pretty much a DH his whole career, but put up the numbers that he did, and unfortunately, you know, he played for Seattle. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah,
I
um,
like that. I like that. I like Edgar Martinez.
yeah, because I'm trying to think, because there's not a whole lot of like recent players. I mean, there's guys that I've liked. Like I've always liked some of the first basemen too. Um, just talking about players in general. Like I've been a fan of like Albert Pujols, Prince Fielder, like that era of first baseman.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not, you know, I like the era. I'm just they're not top of the list for me, you know.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair. Now now these two questions are a little bit harder and typically are the ones that stump people. They have to think about it a little bit. Your all-time favorite Colorado Rockies moment. So it can be some random regular season game in July 5 years ago, or it could be a postseason moment, something, I don't know, spring training, if you watched any Thriller spring training games. What is your favorite all-time Rockies moment?
Okay, you know, it's actually not that hard because I do know there's yet again there's two. It's hard for me to give you
All
what.
right.
Well, I'm my top one in person, and then my top one that I've seen on TV. That's what we're going with here.
Okay. Sure. That's fair.
So my top one in person was my first ever Rockies game. Actually, I believe this was about 2008. We were playing the Diamondbacks. It was just an afternoon game. Um, and at the time, I really didn't. There again, I didn't really know a whole lot about baseball, but I just remember it being tied 2-2, bottom of the ninth. Jason Giambi steps up to the plate and absolutely crushes a two-run home run to straightaway center field.
Giambino.
Yeah, it was just such an awesome moment to see that, and like there again at the time I don't think I was as excited, but like I was excited that we won, but it wasn't like the same kind of excitement you'd see out of me now if I saw something like that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Uh, and then the one I've seen on TV, and I've watched actually the clip on YouTube several times because I just love the moment. Oh, I don't remember the day it was, but I think it was an August game. You're
I
gonna
know it. I think I know what you're gonna bring up here.
yeah, because it was what the 14th inning, 16th inning, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Ryan Spielborg's
Yep.
walk-off grand slam.
Yep.
Dude, that moment gives me chills every time I watch that clip. Like,
Oh, yeah.
it was.
Yeah. Yeah, that one, and then another one, Carlos Gonzalez hitting the walk-off home run for the cycle against the Cubs in like 2010. I mean, you talk about a ball that was demolished. I mean, the rooftop wasn't there at that point. I think that may have hit the rooftop if that ball if it was there back then in 2010, 2011, whenever it was. Yeah, I agree. And then all-time favorite non-Rockies moment.
This
That
is
one's
a
hard.
this is a
That's the
tough.
hard one. So if you can't think of one for this, I don't blame you because that's a difficult one. But
Um, there is one. It's a tough one because I don't know that I'd consider it my favorite moment of all time,
sure.
but it's definitely up there for me. Is Game 6 of the, oh, what year was it? Was it 2011 World Series? It's the Cardinals and the Rangers.
Oh, the David Freeze.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Game.
remember.
Yep. Yep.
I remember watching that game and like there again it didn't register with me in the moment, but oh, sorry, I got distracted. There was breaking news on ESPN, but
All right.
um no, yeah, I just remember watching that game live and then rewatching it like years later, like that moment. And like because his career kind of fell off after that.
Oh yeah.
Like the fact that you reach like the top of the baseball world, and I mean that walk-off home run will live on like
Forever.
forever, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. That's a good one.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
that's that one's up there for me, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. That's a tough one, but yeah. No, those are all great for sure. Those are all great. Um, well, anyways, like I mentioned, we're at the end of the show now. So if there's anything that you want to bring up, mention, or unless you're good to go, that was fun.
Yeah, I mean this was fun. The Rockies are a mess, and it's fun to be able to vent about this dysfunctional franchise with a fellow fan and a fellow friend,
Who
So,
understands it just like you.
yeah.
Cool. Um, well, folks, thank you for listening to episode 52 of
Oh,
Cody, Frank, and I. Yeah, you got something there?
no, I want to say thank you to you for inviting me on here. You
Yeah,
know,
no problem, man. Yeah,
this was
it was fun. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, no, but thank you, folks, for listening to episode 52. If you want to follow us, you can follow myself on all the Twitter accounts, YouTube. Subscribe to us on Dorton and Duck Debate podcast on there as well too. Share with friends and family and everything. And yeah. But anyways, Cody, once again, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And as for Cody, Frank, and myself, Lucas Dorton, until next time, we are out.